Good afternoon, mentors. It is a new quarter and a new year. We are in January into quarter three. This is the mentor training for mentors working with teachers in their second year in the profession. If you're just logging on, I'm dropping the attendance chat box for you. And before we get going, I just want to recalibrate the mentor expectations for, again, those mentors working with teachers in their second year. The expectations are to do a quarterly classroom visit. So the hope is that you did a classroom visit in quarter one, you did a classroom visit in quarter two. Now we're going into quarter three, so you'll continue those classroom visits, one in quarter three and then again in quarter four. Within that classroom visit, there is a pre-conference where you would set the parameters for that visit. What data is going to be taken? What are we going to shine the spotlight on? And then the post-conference is always when you get a chance to look at the data and debrief, and hopefully that reflection process is happening. I do ask that you complete the pre and the post visit forms. The data forms, those I do not ask to see those. Those are personal to your mentee. It's always good to maintain that level of confidentiality, and so I'm not going to look at their data. I will look at the pre and the post visit forms just as an accountability piece, and just to kind of get an idea of if there's any way I can coach in to the mentors. So there's 4 quarterly Zooms, and this is January 16th. You're attending this. If you're watching the video or I see you on the Zoom, then you're meeting that expectation for attending the quarterly Zooms. The last one is in March 20th. All right, so again, just to recap what that classroom visit cycle looks like. You have the pre-conference where you set the focus for the visit, talk about data collection. The classroom visit is always being a witness to the good. It's always your role is to cheerlead your mentee. Your role is to identify all the fabulous things they're doing in the classroom and take the data. And remember that it's the evaluator's job, it's the principal's job to come in and identify things that are concerning. Your role is to cheerlead all the fabulous things they're doing. And again, always the post-conference, review the data, reflect, and talk about next steps. So that's, again, that classroom visit cycle, just to recalibrate because we are coming into a new year. All right, it is survey time. So I am going to drop a link into the chat. I ask that you take a little survey. I do not take a copy of the pre and post forms. They're sitting in your drives. So because I create the drive, I have access to just peek at those. And I do go into the drive, I do go into the folders, I peek at the pre and the post forms, but there's no need to copy anything. There's no need to prepare. You should be able just to get into your drive, get into your folder, and everything should be right there ready and waiting for you. So I just dropped the survey link into the chat. Take a couple minutes to give me some information. When you're ready to move on, just give me a thumbs up and I'll know that I can continue on. Perfect. All right. So let's continue on. Okay, so I sent everybody their data collection binders. Those you should have gotten, again, a data collection binder with the menu, the cheat sheet, and all the examples. So this binder is designed for you to sit down with your mentee. Thank you, Jennifer. I see it. Awesome. This binder is designed for you to sit down with your mentee, flip through the pages so you can look at the examples. I'm thinking that the electronic menu wasn't as teacher friendly as I originally thought it would be. So I just wanted to support all of our mentors by providing everything in a paper copy. Now that you have that paper, now you have the paper copy and the electric version as well. So either one, whichever fits your needs, you have both of those. Both have identical information and black line templates. So that is an opportunity to just to support that conversation when you sit down with your mentee, when you can flip through the binder and look at the cheat sheet. Now, the cheat sheet really lines out all the different data forms that are available to you, as well as the purpose behind them. And then I created a table of content so that just to make it easy and more teacher friendly. So those resources are there. If you do not have your binder, all you need to do is drop a message in the chat and I'll make sure that you get that binder. So for today, we are going to drill down into 3 additional forms. Now, in quarter 2, I talked a lot about the classroom management forms, and I think we did the question form. But by the end of this year, I want to have really drilled down to each of these data forms. We're only going to be looking at 3 today. There are 3 that are a little more complex than, say, the transition observation form or the procedure observation form. These 3 are a little more complex, but they're great forms nonetheless. But that's what we're really looking into today. Now, what we're going to do first is the positive expectations for students, that ratio interactions. And I have a video for us to watch. What happened to, oh, there it is. Yay. And so this is Randy Sprick. He's the author of Coaching Classroom Management. Some of the forms that I provided to you come from his book, but the 3-to-1 ratio cannot be explained better than Randy Sprick. So we're going to watch this. Oh, it's almost 4-minute video.
The 3-to-1 ratio is basically, am I paying more attention to positive behavior or am I paying more attention to negative behavior? Now that's an important distinction because many people think you're talking about nice things teachers do versus mean things that they do or something else. Let's take the belittlement off the table and just assume that is not in a teacher's repertoire. So we're not even talking about the negatives having anything to do with that. The negatives are anytime I am having to pay attention to misbehavior that I consider to be negative misbehavior. I'm trying to use my interaction to shape you back to either following my rules or meeting my procedures or whatever they happen to be. And I'm basically saying that that negative may need to have been done because you may need that information right now. But I am also saying, in part, what I have just communicated to this child is, one way to get my attention is to do something that annoys me. So I want to make sure that I buttress against that possibility by you also saying, it is actually easier to get my attention and more satisfying and a better kind of attention to get attention from me when you're exhibiting pro-social behaviors. So that includes everything from like, if I had to correct you right before you left my class today, but I see you later in the hall and you're not even coming to my class, but I say, Devin, very good to see you. Having a good afternoon? There I am at a one-to-one with that kid, where that kid has seen, okay, he did correct my behavior and he said I need to be doing X or Y, but also he doesn't seem to hold a grudge. Just his saying, hey, good afternoon, Devin, yeah, how you doing? Has communicated. We're, at the very least, we're back to even. The next day when you're walking into my class, I say, hey, Devin, good to see you today. How are you? That's 2, because it's 2 times that I've interacted with you when you were not engaged in misbehavior. Neither of them in this particular case involve praise, but they're 2 demonstrations that you don't need to screw up or annoy me to be noticed by me. And then if a little bit later in class I get the class engaged in an independent work period, and I just come over and I just look at the quality of your work, and I just say, hey, looks like you're doing great. Please let me know if you have any questions. That just acknowledges that I noticed your on-task behavior, and that puts me at 3 to 1. The 3 to 1 is more conservative than most behavioral experts suggest, so I encourage you to think about that as a minimum. But it's basically you want every kid to see all of the adults in this school are much more interested in capitalizing on and solidifying strength than they are just trying to catch weakness. If I'm not careful, I can end up paying so much attention to misbehavior that my kids who are starved for attention find. If I do what this guy wants, he doesn't even notice I'm here. But if I annoy him, I can get his attention like that. I definitely want to avoid that. But I want all of my kids to say, I notice their strengths. And that is done by paying attention to their positive behavior. Something I didn't mention with the group today, but should have, is with secondary teachers, some kids that they really have to watch for with this are the average kids. Because the average kids may never be causing me problems, which may never prompt, oh, I need to pay more positive attention to this kid. But there are also kids that can potentially just fade into the woodwork completely and remain completely unnoticed by me. So if you're never causing problems in class, but your abilities may not be outstanding, I at the very least need to be able to notice when I see you putting a little bit of extra effort into something, or the quality of your work is a little bit better, or the courage to participate a little bit more. I need to let you know that I noticed that effort.
All right, so the form, the ratio of interactions form allows the spotlight to be put on the percentage of positive versus negative interactions that are happening during the classroom visit. Now, the form that you're looking at right now is from Randy Sprick's book, but you'll notice that this particular form is designed for a whole class setting. And you can code, while you're taking the data, you can code the data that you're taking by maybe saying that you're going to look at females or males, you're going to look at class-wide, or you can even assign a code to specific students. And you can tailor this data to whatever way the teacher wants you to assign it, but it allows you to glean the ratio between positive and negative attention. So, and again, the goal is to have a 3 to 1 proportion. So this particular data that I took and on the example, that doesn't really meet that goal. There's barely a 1 to 1 correlation between. So the goal is really a 3 to 1, and 3 to 1, like Randy Sprick said, is a low threshold. If you're working with students who have IEPs, students who the proportion needs to be higher. 3 to 1 is a very low threshold. So, and that so this form allows you to do that. And I do want to say that teachers can learn a lot about themselves and how they guide learning by analyzing how often they attend to the positive versus the negative interactions with students. Ratio of interaction lets a teacher know what he or she is giving attention to. And that attention could be positive or negative. And keep in mind that attention is a currency, and unfortunately our brains are wired to correct students. So intentionally thinking about that proportion between positive and negative is a great exercise for any teacher, no matter where they are in their career. So this particular form, again, what you're looking at is a form that attends to taking data for the whole classroom. Typically, this is a class-wide data collection form. Now, there is also a form that attends to particular students. If that is something that your teacher that you're working with is more interested in just taking for a particular student. So you'll notice there on the example that it calls out the particular student. And again, this form allows you to tally positive and tally negative with the hope of getting a 3-to-1 or higher ratio. And this particular form actually it meets that 3-to-1 goal a little closer. So again, and the last thing I'm going to say about this ratio of interactions, it's the single most important thing that a teacher can do to improve overall behavior of students in the classroom is to increase those positive interactions. So the second form that I want to talk a little bit about, and again, it's in your data collection menu, this is another question chart. Last quarter, I really talked about a form that allowed the observer during the classroom visit, which would be you guys, the mentors, to scribe the questions and assign the Bloom's taxonomy to those questions. And that form is great. This form drills down even more into the questions. Not only does it allow you as the mentor to scribe the question and assign the Bloom's taxonomy that the questions attend to, but also what kind of question or what type of question. So the kind of question would be, is it opinion or right and wrong? Is that question just is it something attending to the knowledge level where it's either going to be right or wrong? Opinion questions don't have a right or a wrong. Teachers usually ask right or wrong questions to confirm whether students know the content or can demonstrate the skills they have been learning. So there definitely is a place for those for the kinds of questions. Types of questions is usually open or closed. Open questions have an infinite number of responses, while closed questions have a finite number of responses. What do you think of Hemingway versus what was Hemingway's first novel? So definitely that first question, what do you think of Hemingway, is an open-ended question. There's a million ways you can answer that question. Whereas what was Hemingway's first novel, there's a right or wrong, there's a definite answer to that. And there's only one answer to that. So again, you have two kinds of questioning forms to use if that's the direction your mentee wants to go in. You can use the form that we talked about last quarter that just assigns Bloom's taxonomy, or you can use this question that drills down into the kinds, the types, as well as the level of questions. And so what you're looking at right now is that sample of the sample that also is in your binder. You can see on the sample that I've scribed the questions, and then I've assigned, I've written in a code for kind, and I've written in a code for type as well as level. Now, I created a code for myself while I was using this form, but as the mentor, you can create any kind of code you want. I just used right or wrong or open for the kinds of questions. I use closed and open for the types of questions. And then I used the Bloom's, just the first letter of the Bloom's taxonomy to identify the level. So this is a sample that you could replicate the sample that I used, or you can create your own codes. And third is the classroom activities log. Now, this form looks busy, but really what this form is designed to do is to analyze instructional minutes versus non-instructional minutes. So you'll notice that when in the sample, you'll notice that when I took this data in this classroom, I wrote the times for when the lesson began at 9:05, and then I wrote in the times for when the beginning routine ended, when the lesson transitioned to whole group. I wrote the times when it transitioned into small group, it transitioned back into whole group. So it's really an opportunity to look at the structure of a lesson, as well as how many minutes are being devoted to the beginning routine, the whole group activities, the small group, the independent work. It really, it allows, as well as the transitions, those are super important too, so that if a mentee decided to use this form, you're going to notice gaps in the times, which would equate to those non-instructional times, or it gleans when the transitions are taking too long. This really gives the opportunity to look at the structure of a lesson. And at the end of the day, the more students are engaged in learning activities, the more they will learn. So this form will definitely capture what's going on in a lesson. Okay, so those are the three forms that I want to talk about. Any questions before I move on? And again, here's the logistics for the classroom visits. You are free to get a sub, and our department will pay for your sub. And what you're looking at is the process to do that. That's an option. If you prefer just to go into the classroom during your planning time, if you have a flexible schedule and you don't want to mess with a sub, there's a lot of flexibility, and you can work out with your mentee what works best for you getting into that classroom. If you decide to get a sub, just know that it's important to reach out to me with the date, and that there's some paperwork I have to do on my end. And then there's a sign-in involved, and I always give the instructions for the time card that come along with the sign-in. So those are the logistics if you've forgotten. And last but not least for today's session, I did have an article for you to read. We're not going to take the time to read it. However, I'm going to drop the link into the chat. In your copious spare time, feel free to read it. However, I did capture the big ideas of the qualities of exceptional mentor teachers, and those are listening, having good ears. Mentors have good ears. They listen, they model, they connect the hows and the whys of teaching. Remember that you're working with a teacher in their second year, so they've already done everything for the first time. So they're probably working towards being more efficient. However, as the mentor, you help connect the hows and whys of what is being done at specific sites. And that whole thing about encouraging reflection. At the end of the day, we want all practitioners to be reflective of their own practice. So by modeling this reflective practice, the hope is that they continue doing that on their own as they continue their career. All right, it is time to get into your drives to make sure you have the Q3 forms. So I'm going to pause here, and hopefully, I'm pretty sure they're there. I checked. I did that work today. I know they're there, but I am here to support you if you have trouble getting to them. And remember that we spent some time in that first quarter making sure that your folder was favorited, so that you can just go into your drive, click on Start, click onto your folder and they should be waiting there for you. And if they're there and you're ready to rock and roll into quarter three, give me a thumbs up and I'm going to say good night to you. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening, everyone. I'll see you in quarter three. And then I'm still here if you have any other additional questions about getting into your drive. So good night and thank you so much for all the work you're doing with your mentee.